Boom, boom. The ground shook with the massive explosions as ice and fire magic clashed. In front of me was a giant dragon, the most powerful boss in this dungeon, and I was trying to defeat it all by myself, but I'm just a mage, far too weak to face such a boss on my own. My strongest attacks couldn't even scratch a scale off its body. Fear gripped me, and the next second the dragon's claw sent me flying. My staff slipped from my hand. Damn it! I was supposed to be the greatest mage in the world, and now I might die here. I hit the ground hard, feeling like every bone in my body was about to break. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching. I looked up and saw my teammates Naomi and Richard. One of them is my lover and the other is my best friend. But when I saw Richard's hand around Naomi's waist, my mind went blank. I didn't dwell on it and quickly asked them to help me out of there. However, they didn't move. They stood still, looking at me as if I were a joke. Why such cold expressions on their faces? Naomi walked over and held my hand, slowly taking off the storage ring from my finger. She said she never thought I would actually come for the Pisces amulet. She said it with such a casual voice. She added that I was a good man who would give her everything she wanted. Before I could respond, she took the ring from my hand, while telling me this way, she wouldn't forget my kindness. Wait, what did she mean by that? Why would she say such a thing? I reached out, trying to grab her, but the next second they started getting intimate and started kissing right in front of me. His hands were all over her. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This was all planned just to get rid of me. That's why we came to send you off, they said. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had treated them like family and they betrayed me. My life was slowly slipping away. As my heartbeat faded, everything went blank. I think I had died. But what I didn't know was that suddenly my chest began to glow red and the Pisces amulet slowly emerged. Bang, 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 wake up! The sun's already up! That familiar and annoying alarm clock blared again. Instinctively, I slapped it off, rubbed my head, and opened my eyes. The room looked unfamiliar yet oddly familiar, as if I had seen it somewhere before. Wasn't this my college dorm? Wasn't I just killed by the final boss? I quickly realized that my storage ring and all my elixirs and treasures were gone. The TV showed that it was August 7th, 2040. Had I been reincarnated? Reincarnated to the day before the game's launch 10 years ago? Was this real? I calmed down quickly and tried to figure out how I had been reincarnated. I remembered a rumor in the game The Eight Wastelands, which said that the ultimate artifact, the Pisces amulet, could grant a chance of revival. If that's the case, it must have been the Pisces amulet that brought me back to life. But my joy at being reincarnated was quickly replaced by anger. Fortunately, I hadn't put the Pisces amulet in my storage ring. Perhaps those two scumbags would have stolen it. Since I had this chance to start over, I wasn't going to waste it. I put on my clothes and walked to the mirror. My reflection glints with coldness. Before all this, I had just gone through the most tragic and desperate time of my life. The person I had loved for 10 years was having an affair with my most trusted friend. They even conspired to cheat me out of all my belongings, elixirs, and magical artifacts, eventually luring me into a death trap. Since the heavens had given me another chance, I vowed to make them experience the pain of betrayal and utter despair. Suddenly my phone rang. The caller ID showed it was Crazy Girl. I couldn't help but smile as I answered, "Crazy Girl, long time no see." On the other end, a lively and youthful voice replied, sounding a bit confused. She tells me that we had just had hot pot together yesterday. However, it seemed like she had gathered a lot of courage to make this call. She said there was something important she had to tell me, and that I needed to brace myself. I knew exactly what she wanted to say. The exact same day 10 years ago in my previous life, she called to tell me she saw Naomi kissing another guy. Not only did I not believe her, but we got into an argument and never spoke again. Hearing her voice again was such a relief. I apologized to her. She remarked that I was acting strange today. I laughed it off casually. Then I heard a heavy object drop on the floor, probably a dumbbell. She sounded worried and insisted she wasn't joking. Just like before, she told me about Naomi and the other guy. My reaction was calm, which made her even more anxious, insisting it wasn't a joke. I interrupted her, telling her I believed her but had something more important to tell her. Hearing my calm voice, she thought I might be on the brink of having some bad thoughts and tried to comfort me. However, I sat down in front of my computer and asked if she knew about the game 8 Wastelands. Of course, she had heard of it. The advertisements were everywhere. I told her I planned to become a full-time player in that game. This is because I knew that right now, people didn't realize 8 Wastelands wasn't just a simple virtual game. It would soon become a global sensation, and eventually merge with the real world in 5 years. No one knew exactly why, but it was certain that the abilities, artifacts, NPCs, and maps from the game would manifest in reality. The sooner one entered the game, the better the chances of gaining an advantage. From the other end of the line, her voice came again. Though surprised, she had heard about this game being developed by the most advanced cosmic-level AI. Remembering my achievements in other games, she believed I could also have a bright future in 8 Wastelands. I decided to move out of the dorm and rent a place to fully immerse myself in the game. She was happy to hear that I hadn't been feeling down and had found a new direction in life. Hearing this, she felt relieved. We chatted for a bit more, but then I suddenly thought of something and quickly asked her not to hang up. I had spent all my money on Naomi over the past few years, and I needed to buy equipment to play the game. I had no choice but to ask her to lend me some money. She got angry, scolding me for spending so much on an expensive birthday gift for Naomi just yesterday to show off. With a huff, she hung up the phone. The more I thought about it, the more frustrated I became. Why couldn't I have been reincarnated a day earlier? Suddenly my phone rang again. It was a transfer notification and a voice message from her. She had sent me 10,000 yuan, saying it was her gym membership fee for several years. She warned me that if she couldn't go to the gym, she'd use me as her punching bag. I laughed and promised to pay her back. A few hours later, it was almost midnight. I lay on my bed, making final preparations. The next second, the ring on my finger emitted a dazzling red light, and after a quick scan, bound me to it. Soon, I saw a window pop up, saying the global beta test of 8 Wastelands had begun. I found myself immersed in the virtual world once again. 10 years later, I was back at the place where the dream started. A palace appeared before my eyes. A beautiful woman, glowing with golden light, floated gracefully in the air. Everyone's eyes were glued to her, unable to look away. These people didn't know, but I did. This was the goddess, also the cosmic-level AI, and this was the first stage of the game. It looked simple, but it had to be approached with caution. Players were whistling and making inappropriate comments, catcalling her, and asking her to come down. I rolled my eyes at their stupidity. The next moment, those disrespectful players were swiftly punished and thrown into a vortex. The others were clueless about what had happened, but I knew that any player who disrespected Goddess faced penalties, ranging from temporary confinement to permanent attribute reduction. I decided to approach her with sincerity. I stepped forward and cupped my hands in respect, and the Goddess looked at me with a calm, approving expression. "Mortal, you seem decent. Do you truly wish to embark on the path of cultivation?" Without hesitation, I requested her to bestow a talent upon me. The next second, her fingertip pointed at me, and a golden light enveloped me. I remembered the useless talent I received in my previous life, which reduced item prices by 10%, a pointless perk. I wondered if I would get the same thing. However, I knew that an innate talent didn't determine everything. Even a bad start could be turned around with my knowledge of 8 Wastelands. A beam of light appeared behind me, and a window popped up in front of me. Innate talent acquired, defy fate. I was stunned. This talent was different from my previous life. The talent had 3 effects. First, every time I died, all my innate attributes would decrease by 10%. Second, upon breaking through to a new realm, all attribute rewards would be doubled. And third, each breakthrough would inevitably attract a tribulation. Failing to overcome it would result in the destruction of my soul. I was overjoyed. This talent was simply too overpowered. Although it comes with its dangers, great opportunities always come with great risks. If I didn't have the resolve to face them, then my reincarnation would be in vain. The talent has been bestowed upon you. Now you need to select your appearance, the goddess tells me. A window appeared, showing different hairstyles, similar to character creation in other online games. These basic models also had different attributes. I quickly browsed through them and found the one I wanted, the one with the highest charisma value. Unlike my previous life, where I deliberately chose an unattractive look to mess around, it wasn't until later that I knew that higher charisma and more attractive character looks made it easier to gain NPC favor. Otherwise, quests would be harder, and building rapport would be challenging. Next, the goddess asked me to choose my birthplace. A scroll unfurled, revealing a map divided into 4 regions. Each of these 4 states suited one of the mainstream professions in 8 Wastelands: mage, healer, sword cultivator, and body cultivator. I pondered for a moment before opening my personal information. Innate talent determined the upper limit for sword cultivators and body cultivators, while spirit determined the upper limit for mages and healers. The most important stat of them all, which is perception, was the key to learning rare and powerful skills, followed by charisma. But none of this mattered since all my base stat is maxed out. After reviewing my stats, I felt a surge of determination. If I chose to be a mage again, I would quickly become the best in the world. However, the weaknesses of mages were also evident. They were very weak in solo fights. I had chosen to be a mage because of Naomi, but this time, I would live for myself. I chose Muxian as my birthplace, a land known for sword cultivators. This time, I would carve my own path. As a golden light enveloped me, my body began to dissipate. The next second, I found myself in the newbie village of Muxian province. The place was bustling with new players. Some were holding signs asking for help, others were already looking for girlfriends, and many were marveling at how realistic the world felt. The crowd was just as lively as I remembered. Soon, an old man appeared and everyone rushed toward him, clearly the quest-giving NPC. Some of the players decided to go for Super Saiyan looks, while others chose Tomato Head, and another person went for Pumpkin Head. I'm sure they will soon regret their decisions, however. It's none of my concerns for now. Watching them, I decided not to follow the herd. Instead, I turned and walked in the opposite direction. It wasn't long before people realized the NPCs weren't responding to them or giving out any quests. A female voice called out from behind, asking me to wait. I turned to see a woman who introduced herself as Lady Kui, the owner of the village's tailor shop. She asked if I wanted to take on a quest. Every player around stared in disbelief, their mouth wide open. An NPC actively approached me. Some even thought I was an NPC because I was too handsome. Lady Kui quickly moved closer, mentioning that her husband had died 5 years ago, and she had been single ever since. She offered to help me if I found the quest too difficult. Was this the effect of having a maxed-out charisma? It seemed I could attract NPCs without even trying. If I wanted, I could build a relationship with this attractive widow. But the thought quickly vanished from my mind. Despite her enthusiasm, I politely declined, telling her I had important things to do today and would definitely come back to take on a quest another day. She seemed a bit disappointed but didn't insist. The other players, however, looked even more envious. Now, I needed to find this one place in the newbie village. I soon located a blacksmith shop. As I approached, a player informed me that there was a blacksmith inside who didn't speak a word. I cupped my hands in thanks and told him I was just browsing. Inside, several players were trying to talk to the blacksmith, a burly man who was hammering away at an unformed weapon. Seeing no reaction from him, they gave up and left. The blacksmith muttered to himself, "Why isn't this weapon taking shape today?" I approached and looked at the furnace below. Without saying a word, I grabbed the bellows and began to pump. The flames roared to life and the temperature soared. I knew this blacksmith was the key NPC in the newbie village. "Yes, the temperature was too low. The fire wasn't strong enough," he said, continuing to hammer the weapon. We didn't exchange any more words. He hammered, and I worked the bellows. The smoke cleared, and the blacksmith triumphantly held up the now-formed weapon. "Finally, it's done," he exclaimed. He turned to thank me, explaining that his apprentice was away, and there was no one to help him maintain the fire. He then pointed to the weapons behind him. "Choose one of these weapons. You can borrow it for a day, but you must return it afterward." While other new players might find this reward stingy, I knew the real benefits were yet to come. I picked a simple iron sword. The blacksmith laughed heartily and told me that if I could bring him 10 pairs of venomous fangs from the bamboo snake within a day, he would give me a special opportunity. After accepting the quest, I left the blacksmith's shop. Seeing the weapon in my hand, other players were visibly surprised. Many asked how I obtained the sword. I pointed to the shop and told them, "The blacksmith broke up. Just sing him a song to move his heart, and you can get a weapon too." Many believed me and rushed inside, starting to sing love songs to the blacksmith. I shook my head, laughing, and I went on with my day. Meanwhile, the blacksmith trembled, muttering, "Get the fuck out of here!" But most of the players thought it was part of the storyline. The next second, he swung his hammer, throwing everyone out. By that time, I had reached the bamboo forest. If one looked closely, one could see green snakes coiled around some of the bamboo branches. One snake quickly lunged at me, and I casually struck it down with a combo, easily dealing with the first snake and earning 3 experience points. I continued to slay several more snakes, gathering various items as I went. Surprisingly, from my experience, the drop rate for equipment in 8 wastelands was usually low, Yet these low-level snakes were dropping quite a bit of gear. Could it be related to my maxed-out luck attribute? Regardless, I continued with my quest. After dealing with all the snakes I could see, I came across a stone tablet that read, "Beware of the snake forest." Wiping the sweat from my forehead, I checked my loot. There's 10 pairs of venomous fangs, but also over 100 poison arrows, equipment, and some copper coins. Elated, I headed back to the newbie village to turn in the quest. I handed the 10 pairs of fangs to the blacksmith. He inspected them and nodded in satisfaction. "Thank you," he said, then handed me a letter. "This is the opportunity I promised." Holding the letter with the word sword on it, I knew this was my ticket to joining the sword sect. I asked the blacksmith if anyone else had received the quest for the letter. He told me that so far I was the only one. Satisfied, I realized I was ahead of the game while others were still exploring. Before heading to the sword sect, I had one more thing to do. I went to the bustling market of the newbie village and started selling some equipment. "Come and see, selling at a huge loss. Want to get stronger? Need equipment? The first blue snake bow in the server is up for auction. Highest bidder wins. Buy the thing so I can get married IRL." Soon a crowd gathered around me. The bidding quickly reached 1,800. Suddenly, a girl's voice shouted, "50,000!" Everyone turned to see a group of female players approaching. Ignoring everyone else, the woman walked up to me and said she could pay in cash or an online transfer. Smiling, I thought the price was good and was about to agree when someone else bid 60,000. A man approached, introducing himself as Wang Jinghao, the leader of the Millennium Guild. He had noticed that I had obtained equipment so early on and wanted to recruit me, thinking that I was a big shot. Other players recognized the Millennium Guild as well. I greeted him politely, but I remembered that in my previous life when I reached the top 10 on the Sky leaderboard, they had approached me, however. I refused, causing Wang Jinghao to hold a grudge ever since. He took my advertisement seriously, thinking I was actually selling the weapon to get married, and even offered to cover all the wedding costs. I politely declined, shouldn't thought of a better excuse. However, Wang Jinghao didn't get angry and said he admired me. Just as he is about to take the bow and arrow from my hand, the woman bid 70,000. Neither was willing to back down, and soon the price soared to 300,000. I wondered which guild the girl belonged to, as she showed no regard for Wang Jinghao. Maybe I could use this to really put the squeeze on him. The girl soon raised her bid to 500,000. Wang Jinghao, feeling pressured, tried to assert his identity, with a hint of threat in his tone. The surrounding crowd was shocked that someone would spend 500,000 on low-level equipment. Crazy how people pay to win nowadays. At the same time, some speculated that the girl had a powerful background. Unfazed, the girl responded that the highest bidder should win, and asked if Wang Jinghao thought he could monopolize everything he desired. His face turned sour. The girl looked down on him, knowing that compared to her young lady's family, the Millennium Guild was nothing. Wang Jinghao, feeling humiliated, decided not to buy the bow. He cursed internally about encountering such a crazy woman, but didn't want to spend 500,000 on a newbie weapon. As he was about to leave, I called out, "Brother Wang, please wait." He turned to me asking what else I wanted. Wang Jinghao, still quite angry, looked at me impatiently. I sincerely tells him that the Millennium Group had a big name, and if Brother Wang was willing to offer 500,000 on the spot, I would be willing to sell. In return, I wanted him to look after me in the future. Hearing this, Wang Jinghao's face lit up, and he agreed on the spot. His gaze towards me changed slightly, and he then burst into laughter, promising that he would help me if I ever faced difficulties. He immediately prepared to transfer the money. After receiving the money, I handed him the bow, though I thought to myself, leaving a good impression now will make it easier to scam him later. Wang Jinghao, clearly in a much better mood, laughed heartily as he left, throwing in a sarcastic remark to a girl, telling her to remember not to go against the Millennium Group in the future. The girl was first surprised and then angry. I watched him leave and chuckled to myself. Spending 500,000 on this piece of junk? What a freaking idiot. The poison arrows are limited and will run out after a few uses. Suddenly, the girl turned and glared at me, clearly upset. "How can you go back on your word? Didn't you say the highest bidder would win?" she shouted, pointing at me and calling me an opportunist. She stormed off in a huff. I thought for a moment and decided I should find a way to make it up to them. Outside the newbie village in the boar forest, the group of girls was preparing to level up. They decided to split up, each aiming to kill 2 boars. Soon the other 4 dashed off in different directions, and I suddenly appeared. "What are you doing here?" the girl asked me, clearly still upset. I didn't care at all, simply wanted to talk with her. She took a deep breath, calmed down, and allowed me to speak. What I didn't know was that, in her mind, she thought maybe because I had just met Wang Jinghao and might have been tricked by the Millennium Guild. Thinking this, she put away her weapon, ready to give me another chance. Seeing her sheathe her sword, I held up 5 fingers and told her that for 500,000, she could buy a top-secret piece of information. This information could give their guild an edge over the others. She didn't immediately accept. Instead, she asked why I didn't sell such important information to Wang Jinghao and reminded me that I asked him to look after me. Hearing this, I waved dismissively. Does he deserve it? I'm just playing along with him, tolerating his nonsense. I acted as if I was in a pitiable situation. To me, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and this girl seemed to dislike Wang Jinghao, so perhaps we could collaborate more in the future. She looked at me skeptically, as if my sudden change in attitude was too abrupt. I sent her my bank account number, assuring her that it would be a fair trade, and I wouldn't cheat her. She visibly struggled with her decision. In the end, she transferred the money to me. Easiest million in my life, I thought to myself. Even though I knew real-life money would become worthless later, I still needed it now to improve my life. Once the transfer was complete, I told the girl she should head back and complete the blacksmith shop quest instead. She was stunned for a moment, then got very angry and yelled at me, "You can't get a quest from the blacksmith's shop." What I didn't know was that she was about to attack me, thinking I was sent by Wang Jinghao to scam them. I explained that she needed to help the blacksmith pump the bellows for 5 minutes after he started forging to get the quest. She didn't say anything but still seemed skeptical. "If you don't believe me, just have one of your subordinates try it out. But make sure to do it discreetly so other players don't find out. Otherwise, the information will lose its value." I then took out the sect letter, which the girl immediately recognized. When I tell her that this was a quest reward, I had said all I needed to say. What she did next was up to her. As I turned to leave, she suddenly called out to me, still confused as to why I would sell such important information to her. I smiled and said, "I don't know, maybe because you're cute." She was stunned for a moment, and then blushed. Her gaze towards me softened. Suddenly there was a commotion behind her. "Help!" We both turned to see an enormous boar charging out of the forest. "Is this a boss?" the girls shouted as they ran. Instead of running, I stepped in front of them and told them, smiling, "You are in luck. This is the biggest boss in the newbie village." One of the girls asked in surprise if I intended to solo the Boar King. I smiled, extended my hand, and asked if I could borrow her sword. She tossed it to me, still skeptical if I could really do it. Without saying much, I thanked her, drew the long sword, and ignored the chatter behind me. "How is this possible? Isn't he just going to get himself killed?" "Right. He's probably just trying to impress Sister Ling by playing the hero." The girl, half angry, half embarrassed, tells them to be quiet. Their laughter grew louder. Just then, I leaped to dodge the Boar King's charge, slashing at its belly, and then its head. It quickly recovered and charged at me again. To my surprise, neither attack did any damage to it. Maybe I needed a new strategy. I got to the Boar King's rear but didn't attack. Instead, I sprinted in the opposite direction. The girls, watching from a distance, laughed at my desperate escape, commenting on how cute my running looked. Ling sighed. "This is all my fault for provoking him. At least he's a newbie, so dying a few times isn't a big deal, it's just a lesson." I soon reached a massive rock. As I neared the edge, I executed a 360-degree backflip, leaping over the Boar King. The Boar King wasn't so lucky. It crashed headfirst into the rocks, breaking one of its thick tusks. A -50 floated above its head as the fallen rocks caused more additional damage. The girls were stunned. They didn't know this was possible. The Boar King was still dazed, and I took the opportunity to strike its forehead with another slash. I continued to hack at it, each hit only dealing 8 points of damage, but all were critical hits. Quickly, the boss lost half its health. Finally, the Boar King recovered from its dazed state, looking furious. It roared and charged at me again. I dodged, not stopping my attacks. The immense pain drove the Boar King into a frenzy, making it charge at me wildly. I repeated my tactic, running in circles. Then, the Boar King crashed onto the rocks once more. Seizing the moment, I jumped onto its head and drove the iron sword downwards, piercing its skull completely. As the Boar King died, a flicker of flame flew into my body, granting me 70 experience points. Breakthrough! I reached the early stage of chi refinement. My talent triggered, doubling all my attributes. followed by a warm surge flowing through me, wiping away all fatigue. Entering the chi refinement stage meant stepping onto the path of cultivation and officially becoming a cultivator. My talent continued to trigger, granting me a random talent, the blood energy seed, which increased my vitality by 10% and could be upgraded 3 times. This was fantastic. The new talent increased my health, and with my attributes already doubled, I had a significant advantage. While other early chi refinement cultivators had 1,000 health, I now had 2,000 and more. Suddenly, a window popped up. Ding! Congratulations on completing the first kill of the newbie village boss in 8 wastelands. A global announcement will be made. Would you like to hide your name? I saw no reason to hide, so I chose not to. As soon as I made my choice, all the players heard an official global announcement. Everyone was in disbelief. How could someone kill the boss so quickly? Many thought I must be a big shot from a major guild. The girls also saw the message and learned my name. While everyone was discussing the announcement, I was busy inspecting the loot scattered on the ground. Thanks to my maxed out luck, a lot of gold coins dropped, along with 2 weapons and a movement technique book. Despite my excitement, I didn't forget about the downside of my talent. Since I just had a breakthrough soon, my tribulation would arrive. The system notified me that the tribulation would descend in 30 minutes. I quickly gathered my loot as the sky darkened, clouds forming ominously overhead. I felt a bit worried because if I failed, my attributes would permanently decrease. Realizing this, I knew I needed to rush to the sword sect. Perhaps someone there could help me. The girl suddenly stopped me, wanting to add me as a friend and suggesting they would buy all of my future equipment. I didn't have much time, so I accepted her friend request and dashed off. She seemed annoyed, wondering why I was running so fast. Did I find them scarier than the Boar King? I quickly arrived at the sect, the dark clouds still looming above. Knowing I couldn't withstand the tribulation on my own, I needed to find someone strong to assist me. I stood at the gate and shouted, "Disciple here to seek a teacher." There were many NPCs gathered around, likely disciples of the sword sect. I didn't stop, and they too noticed the sky suddenly darkening with flashes of lightning. Out of nowhere, a brilliant light appeared, a woman floating in the air. She wanted to know what was happening, and everyone bowed to her. She quickly identified the phenomenon as a tribulation and assumed it was one of the elders' direct disciples making a breakthrough. The elders exchanged glances, unsure of who it could be. At that moment, I shouted and rushed forward with the sword sect letter in hand. A bolt of lightning struck near me, catching the woman's attention. I held up the letter, asking her to help, knowing it was too early to face the tribulation alone. With a graceful wave of her hand, she enveloped me in a radiant glow. The lightning struck, but the glow formed a protective barrier that completely blocked it. After that single strike, the dark clouds quickly dissipated, and the sky cleared. I took a deep breath. The elders looked at me in astonishment. It was the first time they'd seen tribulation for someone at the early stage of chi refinement. To them, I was already a prodigy. Their shock soon turned into eager interest. They rushed towards me, each wanting me as their disciple. One female elder even grabbed my arm. Watching the elders vying for me, I forced myself to remain calm and composed despite how excited I was. Just as their arguments reached a peak, the girl who had helped me spoke up. "There's no need to fight. This new disciple will join under my guidance." Everyone fell silent upon hearing this. It was the sect leader herself speaking. "But the sect leader never accepts disciples," someone murmured. The girl approached me and asked if I wanted to become her only disciple and follow her to the inner hall for training. A window popped up, telling me that I had triggered the greatest opportunity of the Tianyan sect. I couldn't believe it, but without hesitation I accepted and bowed deeply. This was amazing. I had just joined the sect and already found such a powerful mentor. We proceeded to the inner hall, the core of the sect. My mentor instructed me to train here from now on, and assigned another sect disciple to bring me a newcomer's package and show me to my quarters. She then left, but not before instructing me to meet her in the main hall the next day. Although the girl seemed a bit aloof, my goal was accomplished. After waiting for what felt like an hour without any sign of the assigned disciple, I decided to explore the area on my own. Who knew what hidden quest I might stumble upon? Suddenly I came across a very unique-looking palace. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. I gulped hard only to be startled by a female voice demanding, "Who's there?" I hadn't realized I had wandered into the girl's palace. I quickly tried to apologize, but before I could finish, she turned and struck me with a powerful blow, instantly depleting 90% of my health. She scolded me for wandering into her palace without permission. Panicking, I explained that the assigned disciple hadn't arrived, and I was just trying to familiarize myself with my surroundings when I accidentally walked in. Rubbing my swollen cheek, I silently hoped this wouldn't affect her opinion of me. She sighed and decided not to punish me further. Instead, she handed me a pill and sternly warned me never to enter this place without her permission again. Looking at the pill in my hand, I realized it was a high-grade pill that would boost all combat attributes by 30% for 5 minutes and restore 3,000 health out of combat. I walked out of the palace but didn't take the pill immediately. I want to keep it for later. Instead, I returned to my original spot and soon heard footsteps approaching. It was the disciple my mentor had sent. A young girl in blue robes appeared before me. "Junior brother, come and pay your respects to your senior sister," she suddenly said. I bowed to her respectfully. "Greetings, senior sister." She was pleasantly surprised to see me playing along, and a system notification indicated that Nanggong Yue's rapport had increased by 10 points. I complimented her, saying, "Senior sister is not only as beautiful as a flower but also possesses such high cultivation. I am in awe." Hearing this, she became even happier, but suddenly blushed and turned her head away shyly, trying to hide her face from me while calling me a smooth talker. There's a saying that to advance in cultivation, one must not only practice diligently, but also mentor the art of flattery, I added, making her burst into laughter. The system notified me that her rapport had increased by another 5 points. I didn't expect her to be so easy to get along with. The relationship between players and NPCs could lead to different quests and opportunities, depending on the level of rapport. Typically, reaching a rapport level of 61 or above allowed physical contact with NPCs of the opposite gender, while a rapport level of 71 or above could potentially lead to becoming companions, cough the ones in bed. However, this was no easy feat. Many devoted players from previous lives had tried and failed. Suddenly, I uncontrollably coughed up blood. Alarmed, she looked at me and asked when I had sustained such severe injuries. I remembered the earlier incident and thought this might be an opportunity to gain some sympathy and benefits. Wiping the blood from my mouth, I truthfully recounted what had happened. The girl realized that her delay had caused me to wander around and get injured by the sect leader. She almost burst into tears, explaining that the sect leader had specifically instructed her, but she was too engrossed in reading a novel. Hastily, she took out a bottle of pills and handed it to me, apologizing profusely and blaming herself. I shook my head and said it was my fault for wandering around without permission. Before I could finish speaking, she looked at me with admiration, not expecting me to speak up for her even after being injured. Because of this, her rapport for me increased by another 5 points. After speaking, she handed me a green pendant. She generously gave it to me, and I took a closer look. This was a spiritual level equipment piece, defense plus 10, vitality plus 5, and it regenerates 1% of mana per second when out of combat. It also had a special skill, forming a 0.5-second mana shield during combat. "This jade pendant is top tier among spiritual level equipment." She laughed and said, "Of course, as your senior sister, I have plenty of good things." She then prepared to take me to my quarters. I couldn't believe how quickly I had acquired so many treasures, but I also reminded myself that this world overlaps with reality, and these NPCs should be treated as if they have real emotions and feelings. For now, this secret was known only to me. We soon arrived at a spirit gathering array, a place perfect for meditation and cultivation. This place allows spiritual energy to transfer into experience. Sensing the surrounding spiritual energy, she mentioned enviously that even her father's place only had a mystic level array. I was surprised to find such a high-level array in my living quarters. Typically, players would meditate offline or AFK here to gain experience, but this method was very slow. Could it be that my mentor had arranged this specifically for me? We talked for a few more minutes until the girl patted my shoulder and bid me farewell. I thanked her once again before beginning my meditation. Sitting in the spirit gathering array, I could feel the spiritual energy entering my body at a remarkable rate of 52 points per hour, thanks to my maxed out perception. This cultivation speed was dozens of times faster than that of an ordinary early-stage chi refinement cultivator. It seemed I could level up in just a few hours. I decided to log off and meet my mentor tomorrow. Back in the real world, I checked my phone and saw that my account balance was now over 1 million. And I am just getting started. Not long after, I called Ren Lan, and it wasn't long before she arrived on her motorcycle, following the address I had sent her. She took off her helmet, and her daily workouts had really paid off. Her physique was fantastic. As she was coming upstairs, I was already waiting for her at the door. She didn't understand why I called her so early. She had planned to go for a morning run at the track. Actually, I just wanted her to see my new apartment. Is this the place you just rented? Wow, not bad, Renlan said casually as she walked in, taking a tour of the place and praising it non-stop. I told her it had to be good. After all, the rent was $6,000 a month. Hearing this, she jokingly said that I really knew how to enjoy life, asking if her membership fee was being wasted like this. What else could I do? I couldn't pay her back anyway, so I might as well spend it quickly so she wouldn't keep thinking about her money. I teased her on purpose. Hearing this, she leaped over the sofa in one swift move and grabbed me by the collar, sitting on top of me. It looked like she was really ready to use me as a punching bag. I was startled and quickly tried to explain, but she didn't stop, and I had to keep struggling. As a normal guy, from all that constant but unintentional rubbing, how do I say this? Well, my mushroom grew. She seemed to sense something, and her raised fist stopped in midair. Suddenly, her face turned red. She quickly jumped up and we both looked down, the atmosphere a bit awkward. "Lin, how dare you take advantage of me?" she yelled, raising her fist again. Moments later, there was a knock at the door. "Seems like my game pods have arrived." I asked them to wait a moment while rubbing my swollen cheeks. I told her that I had earned some money in the game and bought her a game pod as well, asking her to get off me. Soon, the delivery people carried the 2 game pods into my room. She knew their value and understood it could offset the money she had given me before. I knew that her college dorm wouldn't have space for them, and if I left it at her place, her dad would be so angry he would certainly destroy it. So I specifically placed it here and even prepared a room for her. She wasn't angry anymore. This was the latest model of the game pod, and she was eager to take photos and share them on Instagram. I shook my head, thinking money really does solve 99% of problems. Back in the game, it was already evening. My mentor arrived at the spirit gathering array, praising my talent as the best she had ever seen. In just a few hours, I was about to break through again. I clasped my fists, pretending to be puzzled about why my cultivation had suddenly hit a bottleneck. I knew that each minor stage required special elixirs to break through, and I wanted to see if my mentor had any to help me. Her expression finally softened a bit, possibly because I had intruded into the palace yesterday and almost saw her naked. But soon, she took out a purple pill, explaining that it was a chi-gathering pill used as an offering, capable of helping me break through. I thanked her, knowing that such pills were only available in the best sects. Just when I thought she was about to give it to me, she crushed it instead. "Although your talent is exceptional, I'm worried you'll become someone who only knows how to cultivate without real strength. A true master needs not only cultivation and power, but also battle-hardened experience." I suddenly realized something, recalling my past life. I knew that cultivation could be boosted with pills and rare treasures, and attributes could be enhanced with equipment. But battle skills had no shortcuts. I nodded and told her, "A plant in a greenhouse is unfit to climb the path of immortality. Only a tree that grows in thunderstorms can attain eternal life." Hearing this, she seemed quite pleased. A window popped up. Veronica's rapport had gained 5 points. I hadn't expected that sharing my insights would gain me the sect leader's rapport. Although it wasn't much, it was a great start. Who knows what might happen in the future? Maybe something like this? No, I can't let my mind wander. I'm destined to become the world's greatest sword cultivator. I can't be distracted by romantic entanglements. Women would only slow down my sword-drawing speed. Then she took out another pill, instructing me to pick a difficult chi refinement level mission from the outer hall. If I completed it, I would receive this spirit-gathering pill. Before I left, she also gave me the scroll with the sect's core cultivation technique, the Tianyan Heart Sutra. This was a fundamental technique that all disciples of the Tianyan sword sect had to learn. The higher one's proficiency in it, the greater the benefits. This was one of the perks of being a disciple of the sect leader. While other disciples could also learn it, they had to complete many tasks to do so. But I didn't have to. I quickly made my way to the outer hall. There were already some scattered players there. It didn't surprise me, as some diligent players would naturally discover the blacksmith's hidden quest. However, I had already become the sect leader's disciple and entered the inner hall. "Handsome big shot!" a female voice called out suddenly from behind. I knew immediately it was directed at me. It was Ling. I hadn't expected her to join the sword sect, too. This was actually great. Having a friend around might come in handy later. "What a coincidence! You joined the sword sect, too?" I asked. "I prefer using swords, so naturally I chose the sword sect," she replied. We chatted for a while, but I eventually excused myself, explaining that I had a task to complete. Ling wanted to talk more, but I left quickly. The girl beside her laughed. "Sister Ling, even you can't sway him with your beauty. It looks like winning him over will be quite challenging." She blushed and started to argue back, but by then, I had already reached the quest board. There was a long queue of people waiting, so I took the opportunity to start reading the Tianyan Heart Sutra. It was soon my turn. I told the supervisor that I wanted to take on a quest. She suggested I choose one within my ability. I looked at the various difficulty levels of the quests. The ones at the bottom were the simplest, mainly gathering mundane herbs and only offering some experience points. I felt that was a waste of time. The tasks in the middle involved hunting low-level monsters, but those didn't seem challenging enough either. At the top, there was a golden plaque, which I immediately recognized as a hell-level quest. Without hesitation, I took that one. I knew that hell-level tasks were always special and came with rich rewards. Having already learned the Tianyan Heart Sutra, all my combat attributes had increased by 5%. Besides, I was familiar with the destination for this task. I could give it a try. The task was to recover a lost sect secret technique. It turned out that a Qi refinement disciple of the sword sect had been killed, and the secret technique on him was stolen. My mission was to avenge him and retrieve the lost technique. The supervisor whispered to me that this quest was very difficult and asked if I wanted to choose another one. She warned me that the culprit could be at the late stage of the Qi refinement realm, much stronger than me. She also mentioned that if I didn't complete the quest, I wouldn't be able to take on new ones. I smiled at her but decided to proceed with this task. Other players who witnessed this started mocking me, not only because the enemy was strong but also because the quest had very few clues. Ignoring their comments, I accepted the task and headed towards the gate. By evening, I arrived at the mission location, Chufeng City. In front of me was an inn, the key location for the quest. When the people saw me flying in the air, they immediately recognized me as someone from a major sect, and shortly after, a bunch of women came out to welcome me.